Our scriptures today are actually a couple of scripture sentences. The first one from the Apostle Paul in Philippians. I am able to do all things through him who strengthens me. I can do all things through him who strengthens me. And from our blessed Lord, behold, I am with you always. And we might include this line from Ephesians, through the power of the one who is at work within us, we are able to do exceedingly more than we can ask or imagine. I like those encouraging words about we can do through the power of the Lord who is always with us. Sometimes I think that I can't do. Life is difficult. How many of you agree that life is difficult? Do you? That it generally, yes, it's a general accepted fact that life is difficult. That's the first sentence from Scott Peck's famous book, The Road Less Traveled. He goes on to say that life is difficult because life is basically one problem after another, and we have to deal with those problems. And the way we deal with those problems tells us whether we're sane or crazy. He was a psychologist. Life is difficult. In life, we deal with problems. We can do all things through the one whose power is at work within us. But what happens when those problems seem bigger than we are? I know you've been there. We've all been there. Some of you may be there right now. Oh, if I made a list of the problems that I face right now, I might get discouraged. We all face problems, but what about when those problems are so difficult that we think we cannot go on anymore? And I have had the privilege of having enjoyed such problems at times in my life. Forgive me for repeating a story which I shared with you probably not very long ago. It's kind of like that guy that went to the doctor and he said, "Doctor, what is wrong with me?" And the doctor said, "I don't know, but you remember that problem you had last year?" And the guy said, "Yes." He said, "Well, you've got it again." Well, here it is. It comes again. It's that problem I had during my ordination process which led me to a place of utter despair. We're talking about utter despair today. Not that we're in utter despair. I hope you're not in utter despair, but if it comes along and you see it, we need to know how to deal with it. If you've been there, you need to be reminded how you got through it. I had a problem during my ordination process because I was placed with somebody who, as a mentor. Now, Mary has just finished a mentoring program with a woman, and Mary just absolutely loved this lady, and she loved the experience that she had being mentored by this wise and helpful and generous, spirited pastor. I was placed in a situation where the minister, during my process of ordination back in the 1980s, where the minister was having great troubles with his own church, and I should not have been placed in that church to be mentored by him at that time. He was having trouble dealing with things, and he and I were not able to get along with one another. It was miserable. Now, I have not been married, but I found out what a bad marriage is like. And about 2/3 of the way through the first semester, I decided I wanted a divorce. And I went into this pastor's office and I said, I've got to get out of this. We're not good for each other. I'm not happy. I know you're not happy with doing this, and I'm going to stop. He told me something that I believe to be true. He said, if you stop now, you can give up any hopes of being ordained. I said, that may be. But I said, this is so difficult and so miserable, our relationship, that I'm going to do it. I said, this is my last time here. And I would be at St. Matthew most of the week, but I would work a few hours over at this other church. I would occasionally, 2 or 3 times in the process, I would preach on Sunday morning as part of the mentoring process over there at the early service and then back here at the main service. And I said, this is my last day here, and I left. And I must tell you that I discovered, I think, in that day what despair was all about, because I believed him. I did not see how my efforts to become a Methodist minister could survive that situation. And I was, to say despondent, I guess that's a fairly good word for it. Crushed is an even better one. And you know, have you ever been so down that you really cannot do anything? You are immobilized by your sorrow, your fear for the future. You're just stuck, and that's where I was. And I was going to bed that night, hoping I would get some sleep. As I went to bed, I said to God, now I'm smart enough to know where to turn, okay? And I was also smart enough to expect a response. Now here's where you don't have to expect a response to get a response. No. Remember that guy on TV? Oral Roberts used to begin his television show by saying, expect a miracle today. Well, I didn't expect a miracle, but I did have expectations. And if you don't expect a miracle, that doesn't mean you're not going to run into one, all right? God works beyond our expectations, but I did expect God to do something, because God had to do something, because I told God, I can do nothing. I am in a hole so deep. You will have to get me out of it. And I meant quick. Well, it happened quick, as a matter of fact. It happened during the night. It happened in a dream. Now, when I get to the dream, you'll remember that you've heard this story before if you've been around for a while. Although I'm spending a little more time with it right now than I have in the past. You know, the mind is like a doll's house. A doll's house is from the front, looks like a solid thing, and it's got windows you can peek through, but you really can't see too much. It's a facade. But you go around to the back of the doll's house, and it's completely open. You can reach in and move the furniture around and put little people in there, okay? Our brain is like a doll's house, our mind. It's closed from the front, but in the back, it is completely open to God. And at any time God wants to, especially when our guard is down, and our guard is down when we're asleep, God can reach in and rearrange the furniture. And that evening, I had a dream. I dreamed I was driving. It was either a Model A or a Model T. Is there anybody here who actually knows the difference? Some of you do. Okay. Now, I never drove either one of them. I assume they're a stick shift. I can't drive either one of them. But that's what I was in this dream, driving, let's say it was a Model T. And I want to be in a Model A. I was in a Model A, driving down the road. And it was a sunny day, which kind of represented my life thus far, although I had had serious difficulties from time to time, as we all do. But I was driving down this road. And it was a sunny day. And suddenly, right in front of me, it was funny because there was a demarcation line. It was beyond that point, it was winter. It was sleeting and raining, and the road was frozen over. It was just a clear line in the road. Well, that's what had happened to me that day. I'd been driving along in my Model A, and I don't know why God didn't let me drive my Toyota, but I was in a Model A, and I had hit winter. Dismal, impossible weather for me to go through. And I stopped my little car and I said, I cannot possibly get through that. That's what I was thinking about my ministry. It was over. But then I noticed winter lasted for only about 20 feet. It was a strange image. Beautiful sunny day, winter for 20 feet, and then I could see the sun was shining 20 feet on. I thought, gosh, anybody can get through 20 feet of winter. So I just put the pedal to the metal and just zoomed right through it, and all was sunny again. It was a prophetic dream. It was directly aimed at my situation. And it was God's response. It was God's word to me. God had answered my desperate prayer and told me there's no need to stop now. Your journey goes on. Just go ahead. This is the message that we will always receive from God. Our journey always, whenever you think you're at the end of it, you're never at the end of it. The journey goes on. You will move through it. And if I may use the words from Julian of Norwich, all shall be well and all manner of things shall be well. All shall be well with you. I know you can have situations where you think this cannot possibly turn out all right, but believe me, it's going to turn out all right. Julian of Norwich had to finally say, I don't know how God's going to do this, but I do know from my encounter with Jesus Christ that God will do this. And God will do this. God told me just to go on, and it proved not to be a problem. I did talk to the people at Perkins, and I said, I almost finished that first semester. I think that ought to count. And they said, no. You have to do a whole year again, a whole year of internship. Well, my second internship with Henry Roddy over at First Methodist in Hurst, and it was a wonderful and enjoyable year. I was over there all year for the early service and then back here at St. Matthew for this service. I had 2 services each week that I participated in. I seldom preached over there, but I did a couple of times, but I helped with the worship service and taught Sunday school class over there and worked here also. It was just a good year. It was a rich year. So my dream had been absolutely right, and I knew it was right, and I knew before I had the dream that God would do something because he wasn't going to leave me in that hole. God will never leave you in the ditch beside the road if you ask God to get you out of that ditch. I came across a story about a hymn the other day, that a hymn we're all very familiar with, which is Precious Lord, Take My Hand, written by Reverend Thomas A. Dorsey. I don't know whether you're familiar with his name other than as the author of that hymn, but he was the most significant influence on gospel music, perhaps of any person who ever lived, of modern gospel church music, and it now even extends beyond church music into secular music, his influence. There was a time when Thomas Dorsey thought that he could not continue his work in gospel music. He thought he could not continue with his life. He was a young man. This was back around 1931, 32, and he was called to go to a music convention. And he hated to go to a music convention with his wife, expecting their child. But he had signed up for it, and it was an obligation, and she encouraged him to go ahead and go, and he went. And while he was gone, she delivered. He received a telegraph that's saying that your wife has died, your son is alive. That was devastating, but not many hours later, he received another telegraph saying, your son has died. So he had lost his wife and his son at a time when he was not even there to be with them. And he, as I was, but I think on a much deeper level, was also immobilized. He went into himself, and he thought he could not go on with his work in gospel music. He didn't see how he could go on with his work in anything. There was a friend who finally got him out of the house, got him over to his house and for a gathering, and he deliberately placed Thomas Dorsey in a room by himself where it was just Thomas and a piano. He sat down playing the piano just quietly to himself. I know that when you look at the music, it says that both the words and the lyrics were written by Reverend Thomas A. Dorsey. But actually, the melody is very much based on the old hymn, Must Jesus Bear the Cross Alone? And that's what he sat down and started to play. And the words that were on his mind in his sorrow came to him. Blessed, blessed Lord, take my hand. Lead me on. Help me stand. I am tired. I am weak. I am worn. His friend came back in, and Thomas played for him what he had composed of the hymn. And his friend said, no, not blessed Lord. Say, precious Lord. He went home and completed the hymn, and he debuted it at his church that Sunday, and it was a tremendous success. And it spread like wildfire across the country until it was one of the best known hymns around. And it's one of the best known hymns around the world. And by expressing his anguish to God through music, by telling God, my strength is gone, he was then left with the only strength that was left, which was God's strength. Most people are not familiar with this story. There was a time when Dr. Martin Luther King wanted to give up. He was having threats on his family that they would all be killed, he and his wife and his children. And he says, I cannot go on with this any longer. I must stop. I must find some way to stop in a way that does not destroy the movement, the civil rights movement. I must stop in such a way that I do not look like such a coward. I'm doing this to protect us. He wanted to bow out, but instead he found himself one night when he could not sleep, sitting at his dining table, he bowed his head. And he said to God, I have been taking a stand for what I believe is right, but now I am afraid. The people are looking to me for leadership, and if I stand before them without strength, they too will falter. I am at the end of my power. He said to God, I have nothing left. I have come to the point where I can't face it alone. He said, in that moment, a power shift happened. I understand that power shift, that sense that something changes in the room. He said, at that moment, I experienced the presence of God as I had never experienced him before. It seemed as though I could hear the quiet assurance of a voice saying, stand up for righteousness. Stand up for truth. God will be at your side forever. And almost at once, he said, the fear, almost at once, the fear lifted. When I woke up the next morning, my fear was gone. Thomas Dorsey was transformed enough to write that hymn and sing it in church with a choir the next Sunday. Because when our strength is gone and you are looking at things in your life now, I hope, where you say, I don't know how I can do that. I don't know how I can make it. And the word from God is this: I am with you always, Jesus said. By his strength, you can do exceedingly more than you can even ask or imagine. Just remember, when you're wondering what to do, how can I do it? Whatever it is, it doesn't have to be saving the world. It doesn't have to be the civil rights movement. It doesn't have to be the center of your life that is not holding. Whatever it is that you're facing, that you think, I can't get through this, you're not going through it alone. And your journey moves on inevitably with God within you, by your side, working through you, working for you, with God who made us, working through us, working for us.